Here is what to look for when it comes to buying any tier of land for Illuvium and Illuvium 0. Now, I've been playing the Illuvium 0 game since it first launched over 2 years ago, and so much has changed since the very first version that we need to reanalyze all of this with a fresh pair of eyes. There's been a huge overhaul to roads, converters, and efficiency and how it works in general that drastically changes the best strategies when it comes to Illuvium Land. By the end of this video, you will know which land is the best value of any given tier and whether you should or shouldn't buy it. Now, before I proceed, can you guess how much fuel it would actually take to reduce the cost for travel in the overworld by a significant amount? Please put your guess down in the comments and I will tell you at the end of the video. So now the core principle in Illuvium 0 now is efficiency. Power plants do not give a ton of efficiency boosts anymore, which completely changes the way you play the game. And I have not analyzed that stuff yet, but I will as soon as I can. Now, the other thing is element and fuel sites are very powerful in terms of efficiency boost. So for example, if you have a Solon converter and you place it next to a Solon fuel site, then you will get really good efficiency bonuses, improving the amount of Solon you can actually output on your land. Making sure you can maximize these bonuses will be the difference when it comes to not only how fast your land develops and gets to the max level, but also the potential fuel output on your land so that you can output more fuel than other players and earn a significant chunk of revenue. I'm going to cover all of that in today's video. Now, before we go onto the tiers of land, I want to tell you about another project I am really fond of. Anyone who knows me knows that I love the ETH Lizards and Lizard Labs, but what you might not know is they have evolved far beyond just an NFT project. They are now a gaming DAO that is building infrastructure, handing out alpha, and my personal favorite, allowing any individual to invest into new gaming projects on the ground floor. Jump into their Discord today to learn about the future of crypto gaming as their token launch is right around the corner. And thanks again to Lizard Labs for sponsoring this video. While I do this, I'm actually going to look at the different lands on the market and give them a quick analysis each time to show you kind of what I'm talking about. Now, as far as tier 1 lands go, these perform the best as blueprint machines. Having resources clustered together is beneficial so that you can put lots of scanners around the outside of your plot. You also want plenty of space around the fuel site itself for 2 to 3 converters to fit. The other thing is that you want the diversity of elements to be good, okay? You want one of each element site. So silicon, carbon, and hydrogen. If you can get one of each of them, you're doing really, really well. Let's take this first land, for example. There's 2 carbon sites, Hyperion fuel site, and our silicon, another silicon element site. Now, the problem here is all the sites are really spread out. So you're gonna actually have a lot of trouble scanning on this land specifically and placing a lot of scanners, which is kind of what the end game looks like for me when it comes to tier 1 lands. This next plot has is pretty much identical, has similar issues. If not, it is the same plot for some reason. This next one here is a lot better. You can see they're a little bit more clustered to the top right. Both of the silicon harvesters are near each other, but that doesn't matter that much. Sorry, hydrogen harvesters. And you've got quite a bit of space around the Krypton fuel site in the top right, which is quite good. This one here for Abyssal Basin is not nearly as good because, as you can see, although everything's close together and in the corner, that's good. Your fuel site, your Krypton site, does not have a whole lot of space around it. So it's going to be really hard to maximize the fuel you get from this with the Krypton converters. So that's something you need to really consider. If we try and find a plot that I think is really good on the outset, we can see none of these are fantastic. So this one's not bad here. Oh, it's not great either. Hold on. Let me just really quickly find one. Okay. I would say this land, although everything's really far apart, if it wasn't, it would be pretty good, but you can see how much space you have around the Krypton fuel site right there. That's actually going to give you a lot of benefits moving forward. So let's move on to tier 2. Now, these are also really great as blueprint machines, and generally what I would recommend to someone who doesn't have a huge budget to play with. Tier 1 plots are really hard to play. Tier 2s are a lot more fun. If you enjoy the game, I definitely recommend a Tier 2 or above. Now, the other thing is you want similar elements and fuels close together. So if you have two silicon sites, you want them both as close together as you can possibly get. This is more important with fuels. You want your fuels close together. But besides that, those are the kind of the main things there. The other thing is you actually don't want different fuel sites near each other. I would say that's even more important. Your Solon fuel site and your Krypton fuel site, if they can be far enough away from each other, that is the benefit here. You also want a lot of space for scanners as well, because scanners, when they're next to other buildings, they get low efficiency, which makes it harder to scan and find biodata on your land. The other thing here is that one of each fuel type is a huge advantage when it comes to building up a tier 2 plot of land. Let's quickly take a look at some lands here. We can see that these have a lot more resources on it. I really like this third one, even though it doesn't have any diversity in fuels, which really sucks. You can see how they're all strewn across the center of the land, which means you've got lots of spot for scanners down the bottom and up the top, which is really important to know. So we like things being relatively close together, but what we really want to avoid is, let me find it, is this right here. You see how the three fuel sites are really close to each other? You're not getting any good Krypton converters on this plot, which really sucks. You've got good diversity with the elements, so that's really good. And all the hydrogen sites are actually really close together, which is, again, really, really good. And you also like how it's all in the bottom right-hand corner. If you could move that one... if you move one of those Solon sites and like swap it with something else, that would be great. But overall, this land is actually really sweet. If this is still there when you're looking for land, I would actually quite recommend this one. This is one of the best plots we've seen today so far. We're having trouble finding another thing that's really, really good. I like how all the carbon is really close together, and this Krypton is somewhat on its own down the bottom here, and there's lots of space for scanners in the top right as well. So we need to look at all those things while we're going for a tier 2 plot of land. Now, as we get on to tier 3, they are fantastic for either more rare blueprints. You can still run them as almost like a blueprint farm, or full fuel production. And don't forget that you don't actually have to build on your element sites. So you can discount them a little bit sometimes. You can't do that as much with fuel sites. So on that note, maximizing the landmark is now critical. Okay, it's more important than ever on a tier 3 and a tier 4 plot because of the efficiency changes in the game. Matching up with the landmark, but what many people don't actually realize is you can match up the landmark to fuel sites. Yeah, you heard me right. The landmark on a tier 3 plot benefits the elements, but you can match that up to fuel sites. Let me give you an example. If you get the Eternal Spring landmark, which is a landmark that boosts hydrogen harvesters and all the rest of it, it will actually help Hyperion sites. Because if you have lots of Hyperion sites and the Eternal Spring landmark, then that means that you're getting heaps more hydrogen, which means you can keep your harvesters for Hyperion going back to back because they require hydrogen to actually start and to recontinue and things like that. And so that makes your life way easier. That means less hydrogen converters, which means you have more space for power plants, scanners, whatever else you might need. So matching that up is really, really helpful. The other two are the halogenic geo, which is for silicon, will help Solon sites, and the primeval marsh, which is for carbon, will help out your Krypton sites. So let's quickly take a look at some tier 3 plots. The other thing is you want to match up the elements and fuel sites based on the same principles. You want a lot of silicon sites if you have a lot of Solon. You want a lot of hydrogen sites if you have a lot of Hyperion, and you want a lot of carbon sites if you have a lot of Krypton. I just realized that the letters match up. Silicon and Solon both start with an S. Okay, well, that's an easy way to remember it. So I'm glad I figured that out on the fly. I'm glad I got the opportunity to tell you guys that on the fly. Anyways, so as we take a look at these ones here, these are pretty good. I mean, they're not bad. You have a lot of Krypton here, but you don't have a lot of carbon. So that wouldn't be the best plot in the world. Over here, you have a lot of Krypton and carbon and a lot of hydrogen and Hyperion. So a really good combination overall. You've also got the blue landmark, which I think the colors are actually quite wrong on this. So I'm not going to guarantee that that's the right landmark. But yeah, so make sure you read the names and double check in the Discord and stuff like that for landmarks and things like that. The other thing here is this one has all its Solon sites really close together. This is the only way you're going to be able to cluster up converters is when you have enough fuel sites to actually benefit them. From here, you can actually get a really good Solon grid working and drill baby drill, as Nick likes to say. Down the bottom, you have the Krypton. On the left, you have the Solon. But you don't have one of each fuel, which is really helpful on these plots. Trust me when I say I don't have any Krypton sites on my land and it sucks. Anyways, you can see more of these sorts of patterns. You have a lot of the carbon near each other, which is good. But what's interesting here is down the bottom, you can see that we have this one here. You can see that we have that hydrogen site right down the bottom. You don't actually have to build a harvester on that, which means the whole bottom half of this land, you can build scanners on and get all of the efficiency boosts. So you need to keep that in mind. It actually goes the same for this one here, where all of these sites on the right are all element sites. You don't need to build on any of them. You actually need very few element sites to get your land running properly. So don't think about the element sites in the same way you would for a tier 1 or a tier 2 land plot. Again, this one's really neat here, where we've got the 2 Krypton sites really close to each other and the 2 Solon sites really close to each other, and we have a Hyperion site. And the landmark obviously lines up really well. That's not that helpful because there's only so much carbon that you need, but the fact that you have a lot of carbon and a lot of Krypton makes this actually a really, really good land plot. That is the one I would buy if I was buying a plot right this moment. I would definitely be considering this Brightland Steps plot for sure. Okay, so let's jump on to tier 4. Now, they are great as bastions of fuel. They have so many sites on them. I probably wouldn't really consider going for blueprints too much on them. Maybe a little bit in the early game, but you might transition later. You can also try to get at least one of each fuel site. That is very important. Please don't buy a tier 4 plot that is missing one of them. It is going to cause you a bit of a headache. Try and line up the landmark with the fuel sites. That goes without saying, but the Pegmatite Storm for Hyperion, Fallen Star for Solon, and Dimensional Anchor for Krypton. As we take a look at some tier 4 plots, they're a little bit tricky because they're just kind of like a mess of things. I would say the big thing is trying to get all of the fuel sites of similar types near each other. So if we have a look at this first one, all of the Krypton is basically next to each other. Now, it's kind of crowding out that Hyperion there, which sucks, but your Solon is also near each other. So you're actually doing really well. Krypton's green, Solon's yellow, Hyperion's the rainbow color, for anyone who's not aware. This is pretty good. All of the Solon is quite close to each other, but the 2 Krypton down the bottom right here are separated by a Solon, which you don't love. If we look at here, we can see all the Hyperions focused in the top left. You're going to be able to get lots of converters on that plot. The 2 Solon are pretty close, and you're getting a little bit of landmark synergy, which is pretty good. This one's not bad either. You've got the Solon on the top left, and there's a lot of different things around, but you can make it work even amongst all the element sites, so it's not too bad. And then you have the Solon and the Hyperion occupying the same space down the bottom, which you do want to make an effort to avoid. But yeah, so those are the main things to consider for tier 4 land. So the other thing is actually the land region, which you should be keeping in mind when you're going through this process of which land do I buy. Now, land region matters most for blueprints. It basically matters on which alluvials are going to come onto your land. Now, I got the wrong image here, but basically, for Brightland Steps, you're looking at air and nature. For Shard Bluff Labyrinth, earth and fire. For Halcyon Sea, you're looking at mostly water, Abyssal Basin, water and nature. Then we've got Tiger Boreal, which is water and air, or mostly air, I think. Crimson Waste, mostly fire, and some earth, but mostly fire. And that's pretty much what you're looking for when it comes to land and blueprints. The other thing is distance to other plots is also relevant. Now, it's not available just yet, but sending fuel and elements to other plots will become a feature at some point in the future. For example, if you have 2 Crimson Waste plots and they're located kind of in close proximity to each other on the land map, you will be able to really quickly transfer fuel or elements between them at will, which would actually really help in the late game if you're only just starting to play. So it's a bit less relevant now because once you hit max, you shouldn't really need to send or receive things from other players. And so everyone's budget and circumstances are different, but no matter the cost, there is a land plot for everyone. Although I said tier 1s are primarily powerful in blueprint farms, that doesn't go for everyone, and you can absolutely do well with fuel otherwise. Simply put, for fuel, ensure you have lots of efficiency bonuses possible, And for blueprints, ensure you have plenty of open space to place your scanners. Now, remember when I said how much fuel would it take to reduce the cost for the Illuvium overworld? Well, based on stats of $50,000 spent every 24 hours in Ethereum, landowners would need to sell $2.5 thousand worth of fuel, which is approximately 300,000 fuel tokens. So one Krypton, you need 300,000 of them. If every single land plot sold 15 fuel every single day, then supply would be at parity with current demand. And if every land sold 30 fuel, then prices would drop probably over 30%, maybe up to 50%, I don't know, when it comes to Illuvium overworld travel. I do Illuvium Zero guides like this one often, and we'll be doing a more in-depth strategy guides as soon as possible, so please subscribe for more. Also, if you are just getting started in Illuvium Zero, then I recommend watching this beginner's guide next up in the corner.